Hi, welcome to another episode of 2 Minutes on Tuesday. I am Sam Miller, and this week we're going to talk about comments that I hear periodically from homeowners, sellers who are selling their homes. A lot of times when we'll get a first-time buyer wanting to purchase their home, they'll ask the seller if the seller will pay their closing costs. And it's not that the buyer really wants the seller to pay their closing costs, it's that because of the cost to live, with paying a rent, paying a car payment, probably paying their student loans, it's difficult for them to be able to save enough money to have a down payment and enough for closing costs too. So the idea is, instead of the buyer asking the seller to chisel their price down and negotiate a much lower, instead, in a lot of cases, the buyer might offer full asking price and ask the seller maybe to pay $3,000 towards the closing costs. The benefit to the buyer is if the seller pays the closing costs, that's extra cash they don't have to come up with. So they've come up with their down payment, but they don't have to come up with the closing costs also. And the benefit is if they had to save for that extra money, it might be another year or 2 years before they'd be in a position to buy. Now, some sellers would say, well, maybe the buyer's not ready to buy. That's not necessarily the case. Because the buyer may earn good income. They may have really good credit, so financially they're capable. They just may not have enough liquid cash in reserve in order to make that purchase. So something for a seller to think about when a buyer asks them to pay the closing costs is, am I really going to end up with the amount of money that I'm needing to sell the house for, and will I walk away with enough cash? And in most cases, a seller might wiggle on their price and negotiate somewhere in the $3,000 to $5,000 range. So if we just use even numbers as an example, if you had a $150,000 house and the buyer offered $150,000, they offered full price for the house, but instead of negotiating the price down, they said, I'll give you $150,000 if you'll pay $3,000 towards my closing costs. So the thing to think about is the real net, as far as you, the owner, are concerned. You're really seeing $147,000 once we would debit out the $3,000 for the closing. Now, a benefit is there's no risk in doing this because you're not really paying out of your pocket for closing costs. It's a debit or a reduction to your bottom line upon a successful closing. So for any reason the deal doesn't close, you're not out any of that money for closing costs. The benefit for the buyer, of course, is they don't have to come up with that extra cash at closing. So it's really a win-win for everybody involved. In a lot of cases, a seller might knock $5,000 off the price, but if the closing costs are only $3,000, the seller actually ends up doing a little better by approaching it that way and helping a first-time buyer buy. Now, a side benefit when a first-time buyer is able to purchase, the owner of that property, once their house sells, it enables them to go and buy another property. So the more people that help first-time home buyers purchase, the more robust the housing market becomes, and it enables people who are in the house right now that they would like to sell to upgrade into a newer, nicer home. They have the ability to do that once their home closes. So it really is a very positive cycle. So anytime you hear that the buyer's asking you to pay their closing costs, don't freak out and go, oh my gosh, I don't want to pay the buyer's closing costs because nobody ever paid my closing costs for me. Think about the net number. Am I going to clear out of the sale of this property what I need to clear in order to go buy the next house? And if the answer is yes, then I wouldn't really think negative about paying buyer's closing costs as long as you're getting what you need to make your move. I'm Sam Miller. Thanks for watching. Sorry we didn't do a 2 Minutes on Tuesday last week. I was actually out of town with family and just wasn't able to put one together. So anyway, look forward to doing another 2 Minutes on Tuesday next week. Hope you're having a great one. Bye.